somewhere in the mix?
Yes, he's here. Looking for money.
Y'all the money.
Yes.
Present.
Here.
Present.
Here. Laws affected the use of his ventriloquism skills for Mr. Davis' benefit. I'm present. Thank you. Madam City Manager,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would you like an invocation, Mayor Benjamin?
please. Bring the music,
Lord, in all that we say and do, words are not adequate enough to say how thankful we are for this season of Thanksgiving. Lord, we simply ask that you might touch us in thankful and graceful ways. Allow us to sense your presence, not only in this room today, but as we celebrate this season of gratitude. Touch us, ignite us, reshape us, and transform us to the people you would have us to be. Amen.
Amen.
We will start city council discussion today with the proposed revisions to the Mentor Protege Program Guidelines. Ms. Melissa Lindler, Director of the Office of Business Opportunities.
Hi. Hello. How's everyone?
Fine.
Good. The Mentor Protege program was actually started, as most of you know, in 2008, and we have not had any revisions to the program since 2014. So what we've been doing the past year, because of different issues that we've had with the program and mentors and proteges coming to us with some concerns, we decided to really look at those concerns and look at our guidelines and look at how we do the program so that it could be more effective for everyone involved, not just the mentors, but also our proteges, and making sure that it's doing what the city wants it to do, providing viable, independent, minority, women, small firms or companies, and helping them develop the capacity to actually participate in the construction and professional service industry. So, I'm hitting the right button.
Was it on?
It wasn't. It's on now. What we did, we had two separate meetings in March of this year, March 26 and March 27. We had a focus group meeting with our proteges and a separate meeting with our mentors to discuss their concerns. And it was very, very good feedback that we got from them. And we held it separately so everyone felt that they could freely discuss what their issues were without having their counterparts in the room. And it went very, very well. To date, we actually have 22 construction mentors. We have 20 protege mentors. We have 35 professional service mentors and 25 professional service proteges. Now, the concerns and the issues and the revisions that were proposed by both the mentors and proteges were taken before our MPP Advisory Council in July of this year, July 19th. And we also took them back again on November 8th to let them see our changes and to provide feedback because we wanted to make sure it was inclusive. Now, throughout this process, we also made sure that Columbia Water, Clint's group, was involved, and they provided feedback. They've been at the table with us. We've also made sure that procurement was at the table, that everyone here at the city was involved in this. And now I'm going to ask our compliance team, who has really taken charge and led this effort, Aisha, to come up and go through some of those changes with us.
All right. We also contacted all of our MPP participants, the mentors and the proteges, to make sure they were included in the discussion as we made these recommended changes. And we sent an email out with all the changes, minutes from the meeting, and a chart just to kind of clarify all the changes that we are proposing. So here's some of the recommended changes. One is to increase the protege percentage based on project. Typically, the projects require 20% participation by the protege, but We think that there may be some options to increase that on a project basis, and we just wanted to make that clear in our guidelines that could be potentially, we could increase the protege percentage. The guidelines in 2014 limited proteges to one mentor, and so with these guideline changes, we are proposing to allow proteges to have 2 mentors. And what we see sometimes is that we need to increase the number of proteges participating in the program, so we've tried some outreach efforts to encourage new proteges to participate, and hopefully that'll help increase the number of teams that we have. The next one is mentors can request an additional protege on a case-by-case basis if their primary protege is overextended. So sometimes on a project, the proteges, they're small companies, and if they have more than 2 or 3 projects, they may become overextended. So we wanted to put something in the guidelines to allow a mentor to request to have an additional protege, and we'll review that on a case-by-case basis.
Aisha,
Yes.
clarify if the discipline matters.
So in construction, we allow a water plant team and a water line team. In professional services, you can have 5 different teams: water distribution, wastewater collection, water treatment, stormwater, and wastewater treatment. So depending on the discipline, you can have a team in each area. So in construction, you can have a team in water plant and water line work. And in professional services, you can have a different team in each 5 of those disciplines, because the proteges have various skill sets. So we did want to have them to have that flexibility to have a team in each one. The next one is if arbitration and mediation occurs, we wanted to require that be held in South Carolina. One of the complaints we've received from proteges is if this happens, sometimes the prime firm wants them to hold those arbitration or mediation proceedings in their home office, and that's a big expense for a small protege firm. So we're not advocating
Home
for
office or
Home state.
home state, yes.
That's probably, it's usually fairly traditional language. But,
Okay.
Aisha, but and you're saying if done, so we don't require arbitration and mediation if there's a dispute.
No.
Is there something that we could, and I don't know if it'd be the expense of mediation, but like, I think Clinton and Missy know the situation that I kept calling about. You know what I'm talking about. So like in that kind of situation.
No, I don't.
I don't wanna. Well, yeah. We just had a dispute between a mentor and a protege. Only you can say stuff like that. But just in that kind of situation, you know, we don't really need to be in it, but clearly somebody needs to help work out those issues. And I'm just wondering, should we require some kind of mediation, even if it's the mediation center or something on situations like that?
I agree.
I
Something we need to look into.
Yeah, I agree, because I think from time to time we all may get calls, and it kind of puts you in a situation where, you know, sometimes folks are they're calling you because they honestly feel that you can make something happen. And sometimes you can by conversation, but at the same time too, you don't want to be perceived as overstepping your bounds.
you know, I'm sorry to interrupt you. She'll want to she's able to get back. So, Daniel.
Yeah,
Took off track. I apologize.
Well, I just looked through and I see that we're making changes. I guess the one thing that I've always wondered about the program is when do people actually graduate? Because some of the people who are proteges have been as proteges since the program started. I mean, what time do we kick people out of the nest?
Yeah, so the current guidelines require graduation after 8 years from when the policies were changed in 2014. So anyone that became part of the program in 2014 and 2022, they will be required to graduate. Now, you can graduate if you exceed the financial threshold prior to that 8 years. And we have had a couple of graduates.
What was the behind the 8 years? What was the trigger for that?
I believe that
That's what the federal government, yeah, that's what the
So the
federal
feds
government
did.
is.
Contract.
It says 8A.
Yeah, 8A is 8A.
What is the financial requirements based on the gross of the firm? Or
Yes, we look at the 3-year average gross revenue for the firm. And for professional services, it's $3.5 million. Once they exceed that, they can be a mentor. For construction, it's $5 million.
They could be a mentor, or they can no longer be a protege.
They could be a mentor
Just in that category.
in that category.
But some of those people in their other businesses probably generate.
Right, so we look at their water sewer revenue.
Focused on that profession.
what
Makes
was the
sense.
yardstick for kicking them out?
Yeah, he's asking, I
3.5
think he's
million.
asking another question.
Okay.
$3.5 million, I think you said. The gross is $3.5 million.
For professional services.
And they could come out, she's saying they could, if they reach that before the 8 years, then they could graduate
Become a mentor.
and become a mentor. They don't have to become a mentor, but they
The
could.
question was when they were
That's just one
required
of
to
Clint's
graduate.
contracts.
So are they required to leave the program at that point? Rosalie?
At 8 years.
At 8 years, they have the option to come out early if they reach the growth.
Option.
Right.
Right, that's
Get
correct.
some coffee.
So once they graduate after 8 years and they're not ready to be mentors, can they still continue to be protege or have to file another time or apply again?
So the way the guidelines currently read, they would not be able to maintain that protege designation. I believe we've talked about a couple of options, like maybe setting up a graduate protege program, because there will probably be some that are in between. But we do want to encourage them to graduate. So after 8 years, they have to graduate from the program.
So they can just go partner with somebody and create another entity. I mean, the only thing that would limit them is their ability to get bonding at that point, because they've reached a threshold or they've got to be on their skis on a scope. But I mean, you can't carry somebody forever. At some point, they got to leave the nest. I mean, this program wasn't meant to do that. It's supposed to help them grow. So.
I guess, yeah, makes sense.
I mean, if after 10 years or 8 years you're not able to get it, then, you know, the program's failed. I mean, that's...
Well, I mean, not necessarily that. I think there's some companies are comfortable of not being a mentor. I mean, they're comfortable being a protege, period, you know? Whether it's bonding limitation, whether it's for staffing.
That's called a subcontractor at that point. That's no longer a protege.
And just to also point out, we are going to look at having some more protege-led projects to give proteges more opportunities to grow and develop their skills, and hopefully another option to graduate from the program as well.
I think that's the biggest feedback I've heard lately. It's just not enough programs for the protege to jump in.
But you haven't had instances where you've had to basically just kick somebody out of the nest. You know, they've reached the threshold, met all the requirements, and have you ever had to do that?
So for other reasons, if there were some safety concerns, not having the appropriate safety gear or safety equipment on the project site, that may be a...
I mean, in terms of the number of years.
No, not yet. We haven't reached that first 8 years yet.
Put it in 14. Got 4 more to go.
Yeah, well, but that's
Okay.
something to look at.
The next one is the prompt payment language. We just want to make sure that we added language to ensure that mentors and proteges adhere to the city policy when it comes to prompt payment. We were silent on that before, so we wanted to add that language. So whatever the city policy is, that our participants adhere to that. We also added that teams must bid or submit on at least one project within a year, or they may be removed from the program. We did put may in there because depending on what projects come out within a year, that might not be the type of project a team would bid on. But we want to make sure if the protege is paired with a mentor, their mentor is actively pursuing city work. If not, then they need to be on a different team. The next one is the removal of approved mentors or proteges who are not actively forming a team. Over the past few years, we've had a couple of mentors that have not even tried to set up a team. So we want to make sure that they are trying to form a team if they want to remain in the program. The next one is proteges must be notified of the change orders or contract amendments and given an opportunity to provide services. They must also, the team must maintain the minimum percentage where appropriate. we've received some feedback that proteges were not notified of change order opportunities. So we want to make sure that they're given a chance, if they can participate in that, whatever that change order is or that amendment, that they are given the opportunity to meet that need for the project.
And how is that monitored when you go that? Because one of the things that we don't want to encourage is that people low bid and then come back and change order us to death, which unfortunately we've seen in the past. What's the trigger on that? Do we have a mechanism, checks and balances for that?
Yes, well, the construction management team would review change orders and make sure that they are necessary and a reasonable cost. What we're asking is just that once that determination has been made, that we allow the protege to participate in that.
So, from a construction management, I guess Dana's not here, but so will Dana get involved with the procurement team in the beginning before we award it to make sure that we don't end up in that situation?
Yes, right. I think what, for any change to, we would have a,
So we'd have a 20% minimum protege participation, and let's take a plant project, for instance. I think if we had a need that included modifying a structure, and we had a construction protege was a mason, we want to make sure they get a portion of that, and when they maintain still 20% of the overall contract value. But the where appropriate is important too, because if it's an electrical change only, and the protege doesn't provide electrical services, we wouldn't want to pay a markup just for the sake of maintaining that percentage. So, but we do, our construction management group does monitor those and make sure the change orders are appropriate, and we try to avoid the back end change order low bid on the front end.
The last one in here is that there's no minimum percentage required for mentors and projects designated as MPP. So we do require a minimum for proteges, but that doesn't work the opposite way. If the protege can do the bulk of the work, then we're okay with not having a minimum percentage for the mentor. And that's all that. And it's always been that way, but it was never clearly stated, so we added that language in there.
Have we had anybody try to do that yet? Where they almost acted like a GC and let the protege kind of
Do
have
the bulk
of it?
Yes, sometimes that does happen depending on the project, if the protege can perform it. So if we make it a traditional mentor protege project, they have to bid as a team. They can only respond if they're a part of the team. And if the protege is capable of doing it, then we have allowed that.
Be great to try to get it to be that way towards the end of the program, so that when it comes graduation time, they'd have the ability, they still could team together.
Yes.
Because there's probably things that if they're doing it correctly, they probably find that there's mutual ground to be better partners in going after bids. But maybe there's a way we can tweak that where we're encouraging that on the back end, so that we have those proteges have the ability to graduate with the ability to bid. They become the mentor,
That's the
which is what I think always has been the goal. I think that'd be great if we could figure out how to tweak that. I'm not sure what the way to do it, but.
I think that's a great idea. The only problem would be the type of project it is, and it may not have the percentage there for them to increase.
Right.
That's only.
But if we could give them a mechanism, maybe they'll start thinking about it a little bit more, And
Yeah, our protege-led, we are looking at greater opportunities to have protege-led projects, or even protege only, and then they are the prime contractor on those
That's great.
projects.
And just to follow on that thought, are we requiring the mentor to spend, like, I don't want to say a percentage time with the protege to kind of take them under the wing and stuff? Because that's the other thing that I've heard from some of the proteges is the mentors never spend any time with them to show them the ropes so they can be successful.
Yeah.
So, with the same line what Rickman was saying is, I think maybe find a language somehow. I don't know that you want to require a percentage time, or I don't know how you want to word it, but maybe look at and see if we can work that out a little bit.
Okay.
There is language in there now that specifies meetings with the mentors.
Yeah.
And proteges. We are going to make sure that we're better stewards to make sure that is actually being done.
Okay.
So the language is there. We just have to make sure that we're
So these changes start with graduating proteges will not have to wait 30 days to form a team. Right now, we say if you dissolve a team, you have to wait 30 days before you can form a new team. But we definitely didn't want to penalize a protege that is ready to graduate and become a mentor. So we want to allow that dissolved relationship to be effective immediately so that they can immediately form a new team and bid on the project without having to wait 30 days. The next one is that the assistant city manager is responsible for oversight and implementation of the program. Will recommend suspension termination with final approval by the city manager. Before, this was more on a staff level, and we changed that to the assistant city managers and city managers having that approval decision. The last one is the new advisory committee members. So our current members have been on the council for a long time, and we think it's a good time to encourage some new members on that committee. And we would like for our previous members to serve as ex officio members. So we've had a lot of interest from our mentors and our proteges to be a part of that council.
How do you vet the advisory committee?
So they are just once they show their interest, they're selected. Is how we've done it in the past. They have to be participants in the program.
So we're talking about a new reconfiguration of the committee, advisory committee.
Correct.
Still using your existing participants of the program.
As resource persons or?
As committee members.
As committee, okay. So some will remain and others will leave,
Yes, sir.
either voluntarily or just say goodbye.
How many do you have total?
I think it's
9.
9 total.
Yes.
How many, we have maybe 1 or 2 that have never been active.
Thank everyone for their service.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Stagger.
But we would definitely want to make sure
Yeah.
it's still mentor and protege participants, but we want to give them all a chance to be at the table, to be a part of the decision-making process.
And so what role has the committee played to date?
They really helped us with the guideline changes, the revisions.
But I meant like during before we were actually changing. I'm just wondering, is there active participation throughout?
Yes, it has been. They've been very active in providing us feedback and experience as far as, because they're on team, so they know some of the issues that they're having, and they can address those with us, and we can tell them some of the things we're hearing and see, is this really something that you are experiencing, or is this an isolated event? They've been able to provide us with a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
Mentors and proteges know,
Yeah.
they know that they're on the committee, so sometimes they'll contact us directly if they have an issue, protege to protege, and then the protege may come to us and share their concern with us, without necessarily telling us who the protege is. So it's another way to make sure that we have feedback from everybody.
So are all the committee members all are made out of mentor and proteges?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
They're very active. They meet with me and the staff. If I can't be there, Missy's there. Missy's always there too. But the required number of meetings is, because we're trying to be conscious of their working people as well, but how many times
Twice
a
per
year?
year.
Twice per year.
This year
And
we've
then
met a
as
lot.
yeah, this year it seemed like, I was about to say, it seemed more than that this year. But yeah, it's a good group.
And they're very active, the ones that do come, they do participate.
So are y'all saying you're going to put in like 2-year terms, or
4
you're not
year.
even getting into terms?
4-year.
4-year terms, okay,
Because right now we have nothing.
right, 4-year terms.
I just wanted to add, there's language in the guidelines that say at least 40% of CIP projects will be mentor protege. And we looked at the last 2 years, and it's been about 30%. But what we have increased are our CDBE projects, which are the Columbia Disadvantaged Business Enterprise projects, and those look for opportunities to encourage participation from companies that are disadvantaged business enterprises. So we've increased the number of those, so that has resulted in a decrease in MPP projects. But we think it's a great opportunity to look at other disadvantaged business enterprises that may not be in the MPP program, maybe some electricians, painters, landscapers, haulers. So that's why we've increased some of our CDBE projects and decreased some of our MPP. But like I said, we are going to look for additional opportunities to do more protege-only and protege-led.
And a number of our proteges and mentors are also part of our CDBE
I'll wait till she's finished.
Go ahead.
So were
Oh,
there
you
any?
finished? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Question. Mental protege-led projects. Can a protege actively recruit their own mentor? If I'm a small business, I have an opportunity, but I just don't meet that dollar threshold. Can I recruit my own mentor?
Yes, they can. They just have to do the
He has to-
application process.
right.
But that is great. We always encourage any subcontractors, if they're aware of someone that is interested in the program and can meet the requirements, we will certainly see what we can do to get them approved. Because they may have contacts that we're not aware of, so that would be great.
That's good. Well, it opens up something for some of the larger guys also.
Yes.
So that's,
Now, is every contractor requiring a mentor to have a protege?
So is every
Every contract that's funded by the city or do you have to have a protege?
No, you don't. Only if you want to respond to a project that's been designated as mentor or protege do you have to have.
Do you want to consider that or you don't want to?
Most of the projects are designated that way, so I think we're capturing the vast majority of contracts.
And some you can't, it's not appropriate, because of the type of project it is. And Clinton will talk more about this, but, it just doesn't warrant an MPP project. Actually, the integrity of the project may be questionable. So in that case, we may do a CDBG, but it's labeled as something, or LDE, something, in its place instead of an MPP.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know you all had asked about the arbitration, mediation, and Patrick and Teresa were saying, we could designate that as a requirement. I was asking them about, depending on what the conflict was, should we just, should we put that in there generally? Because maybe some conflicts wouldn't warrant it, but they said if it's in there, then that could be the option for the mentors and mentor protege, at least typically it's gonna be the protege who's probably asking for some type of assistance, and that's really been the issue why I was trying to clarify it, because we as a city really don't need to be involved, and I think sometimes the proteges are looking to the city to come in and, help fix it, and it's hard, because sometimes we do see things that, but I think with the monitoring that we're talking about, hopefully we'll address some things before they become such a conflict. But that is something we can do according to legal, if that's something y'all are interested in us doing.
Now, do y'all also do like update meetings with the protege during the course of the construction period to see if there's any feedback, any problems, anything like that? So,
They'll call us too.
oh, I'm sure.
And we do require quarterly reports that they have to submit and tell us about the meetings that they're having. Do they need any assistance from the city? Sometimes, occasionally, maybe one or two, they'll say yes, but usually the answer is no. But yes, we do have quarterly reports to find out the status. Yep.
We're trying to get more of an open process where they feel like they can come to us. And we want the mentors to know that we are trying to develop that relationship with them so that they feel free to come to us when there's an issue. So if you look through the guidelines, we did add more language, really to protect the protege when it comes to front payments. Other things, ethical or unethical behavior, things that would remove you from the program. We added additional information or additional things that could be used to suspend you or terminate you for unfair treatment or not following through or doing what you're supposed to do on behalf of the protege. And they're responding already.
Now, can you terminate the protege too? If they, okay.
So say if a protege was responsible for payment maybe to a sub, if the protege has a subcontract and he didn't properly pay or pay in terms that they had agreed on, that could be possible grounds for termination. And it doesn't actually have to be within the MPP program, it could have been on another project, but it's still something that we're looking at.
we adding the language on the mediation arbitration?
I would like to.
Yes, okay.
So the language again is that we're encouraging mediation prior to arbitration? Or
Not prior to arbitration, no, if a dispute arises, we're encouraging mediation, because we've had, like, situations where people come to us asking us, the protege, you know, I'm not getting prompt payment, and they're expecting us to get in, and we can't get into it, so.
requiring mediation that we pay for, that the mentor pays?
No, that we wouldn't know, that, yeah, they would have to, yeah, they would have to pay for that. Should, Teresa K, should we specify
Right.
that it's paid for, yeah, that paid for by the,
Both parties, I would think.
yes, so, yeah.
I just think if you're gonna do it, you gotta give it some real specificity.
Yeah,
Right. No, I agree, yeah.
yeah.
I think that's a good tool to keep us out of it, you know, let them fix it out.
We'll work on it with legal and we'll send it to
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That's great.
I think that's really.
Our next council discussion item is an update from the Black Expo. Mr. Darren Thomas, President of Thomas Media Group.
Good afternoon, council. Thank you all so much for giving me the opportunity to come before you. In recent conversation, we realized that we had not come back before council to give our traditional wrap-up report following the Black Expo this past May. And please know, we take great pride in this report, and prayerfully you all have all received a copy because we certainly create it for your edification as well as our other partners, because we think it makes sense, and it certainly shows good stewardship on our part with what we've been invested with public tax dollars and the impact that we continue to have in the marketplace. And let me also share this. We also take great pride in the fact that long before council engaged the Moore School of Business a few years ago to work with a lot of the hospitality tax groups to understand the impact and where tax dollars were being, how tax dollars were being utilized, you know, we were very much ahead of the game. We invested with Clarity Research well over 18 years ago. We hired a third-party firm to come in to collect the data, and we do that for several reasons. One, we understand every year where to put our dollars to draw our attendance, what makes sense in terms of what people expect, our value proposition in the marketplace, if that's changed, but also making certain that citizens understand the true essence of the event and they derive from it what makes sense. One of the things I also want to make mention is that some of the highlights from last year, and one in particular, I'm glad Melissa's still here. We specifically worked with the OBO office Friday night with the Taste of Black Columbia, but also Saturday at the Black Expo. And from the entrepreneurship standpoint, having a guest speaker of the likes of Dr. Dennis Kimbrough and having him partner with the OBO office, where we placed him, where he was introduced on the stage, those kinds of partnerships make sense. We think anytime that we're in a position to better position the relationship that we have with the city and city entities, particularly if it drives city initiatives. And Melissa was very, very helpful last year in helping us to understand her charge, some of the things that she focused on, and how we could marry what Black Expo is doing to further its impact in the marketplace. Last year, we focused on the 5 pillars of economic empowerment: jobs, health, education, wealth creation, and of course, entrepreneurship. Our attendee mix continues to be a mixed bag of sorts. It's still 60-40, 60% of our attendees from right here in the Richland, Lexington County, but 40%, and that number, I'm sorry, the draw changed last year. We, for some reason, we've got a lot more people from the Savannah area, which knocked out the Atlanta area as our 4th best. So top 4 cities outside of the Columbia MSA Charlotte, Florence, Augusta, and Savannah's added to the mix. And again, we know that specifically because we hired the outside third party to come in, collect the data. We know the economic profile of our attendees. We know from whence they've come. And we ask that all-important question, will you attend in the future? And what is it that you expect of us and how we can make this event more impactful? But again, Council, I wanted to come before you formally to say thank you, to just give you a quick recap. I'm certain that Ms. Belton has already made certain that you have received a hard copy of this, which details our data day by day. But again, this partnership with Council, we would not be in our 22nd year if it were not for the support of this council and the city. And I say that as we look at, just by example, City of Greenville, having met with Mayor Knox White and Mayor Pro Tem there, they've asked us to come back to reshape the event that we do on Saturday because everyone looks at Columbia at this event. Same thing in Jacksonville. All eyes were on Columbia, and we know because our footprint is right here, we have a lot more relationships, but it says and it speaks volumes.
Thank you.
He was talking for you when you went in the room, too, last night.
Yeah, you voted twice.
You voted twice.
He did?
They were good votes, though. Lots of money. Hyatt Park is fully funded.
Yeah, okay. There we go. We'll get back to that. I think I remember mentioning this to Darren at some point, but since we've been doing the funding for with HTAX dollars, I don't know if you've noticed, but the one thing that hit me between the eyes was that the first, and at that time, the only organization that was coming back to us with a document telling us what they did and, giving all of the data was a Columbia Museum. And then the second, my recall, was Black Expo. I'm not saying that that's what we require, but I think every now and then it would be good to just kind of know how things went. Most of us don't get to attend a lot of these events, but it helps me when I can reflect back on some data and some sort of report on how things went. The dollars are well spent and that sort of thing. So I just throw that out.
Thank you.
I don't know how many, I think Capital City Lake Murray comes every now and then. So we get a good feel of where the dollars are going, and it's good feedback. I'm not saying we should put it in writing that we want to see that, but I think it says a lot for them, because there are some organizations that the capabilities are just not there either.
Well, that's a good point, Sam. It's strange that we have an array of folk to come and ask for money. That's yours, Tamika.
I've never heard that ring before.
It's not mine.
It's coming from that.
Might be Darren. Is it Darren?
My phone on silent.
If don't nobody answer, that's the Lord. God befriended me.
It's your pocketbook.
Well, it's a strange set of circumstances when folk fill up the chamber and fill up this room asking for money. And there's no impetus for them to come back and give us some report. So Darren, it's I thank you for that.
Thank you.
It allows each of us, I think, an opportunity to not only see what you've done,
Right.
but I think your numbers are good. You've been here 22 years, so something has kept us there.
Absolutely.
And through your own initiation, you've come today just to share with us
Absolutely.
what you've done.
Absolutely.
And I hope that is an example for other organizations.
Certainly.
I mean, it's better to say thank you, even if you don't get anything, if you you didn't get what you asked for.
Right.
To say thank you, that goes a long ways.
And Councilman, thank you for that. And I will say to you, we've had partners. The support we get from the city represents basically around maybe 15% of our total budget. And what we've had partners tell us emphatically that if it were not for this kind of reporting and sharing of data, they would not be consistent in their funding. But because we were a little different and that we were very forthright in sharing that, because we believe from a long-term perspective, it bodes well for not just us, but it also speaks to Columbia or any of the markets we're in, so that folks understand the real impact and where we could go as a community. So again, we take pride in it. I should have been before council immediately following, but I did not want this year to end without me coming back to say, here's what occurred, here's where we see this going, and here's what the community expects of us going forward. Because we have shaped and we continue to look at best practices and what makes sense, and we use a lot of data. We've got focus groups coming up in about 2 weeks where we've got folks from the community coming in to really look at this. We've got focus groups going on in Charleston today, but we're really looking and understanding, in our value proposition and where we were 22 years ago and how we're continuing to be relevant. Are we hitting that mark? And we just announced our Black Expo dates for next year. A lot of engagement, a lot of excitement, but again, would not be possible if it were not for the investment in time and resources of this city and this council.
Just quickly, a couple things. Number one, just to the point about other groups, I do wonder, y'all are correct, there aren't many groups who come in front of us with their numbers, but I do want to say that some groups, they do provide it in their application, and so staff and the committee sees it, but we don't. So I just wanted to make sure that it was noted that there are groups that do get money and give a report, but we just don't see that formal report. We might need to, and I think we brought that up with Libby before she left, and then we just really hasn't transitioned that to Dee Dee. But we might need to ask Dee Dee to make sure that when we're doing our allocations, that at least that part of the applications do come to us. So that was my first point. My second point to us is the other thing, just a reminder, so Black Expo was on the list for us to consider funding, because the funding for next year isn't the level that will allow them to have Black Expo, but we did want to make sure that we had this report, so we need to revisit that. That would be my second thing. And then thirdly, Darren, I've kind of been thinking about this. I like the shift that you've made this year. I think it's important for the overall community and for what we're trying to do, especially when you look at what Melissa's doing. I think it's always a struggle when you shift and when you're trying to get people to do stuff that's not just entertaining, but it's also educational. Right. And maybe during the focus groups, before or after the focus groups, Melissa and I and any other council members who might have some ideas can kind of share with you some ideas on. I've got maybe some names of people I like. I was excited to see Dennis Kimbrough. I love him. I love his books. Not everybody knows who Dennis Kimbrough is and comes, but I've got some ideas of some folks who maybe have that name that people will come see, but they also have that message that will be empowering and inspiring, exactly what we need. And so maybe part of that is trying to go after some of those folks. Absolutely. But if we do, that also means that the funding has to be there in order for you to get those folks.
And Councilwoman, we welcome that. And just to your note, the Budgetnista, who was at T.D. Jake's conference, where she drew 6,000 people, we reached out to her, strong interest in Columbia. She's already asked us to send a contract. I know you follow her on Twitter, but it's those kinds of people that, maybe out of my sphere, but that came from some of the millennials and some of the other folks who said, the Budgetnista. Yeah, she's a
millennial. Yeah, she tweets about like financial, saving, having your budget. Yeah, she's a big following.
But those are the kinds of folks that we're really looking at, and I think would fit well. But we also welcome ideas from council. And
Two, I'll give you the names that I.
awesome.
You came.
Awesome. And Melissa, we look forward to talking with you, to seeing at this point in this, where can we also best fit to help some of your initiatives as well.
Darren, if you would, talk about the shifting in the paradigm.
Absolutely. So
22 years, the expo was primarily a gathering.
well, a lot focused on entertainment
I was gonna,
and the exhibitors, those kinds of things.
the taste of Black Columbia.
In that
And
state.
of course, the entertainment.
It's Taste of Columbia. We're one Columbia, don't you know that?
Well,
But you know what, Councilman?
no,
Everybody
no,
comes.
Everybody, the taste of Black Columbia.
Hey, I probably eat in more of those places than you do.
That's what, well, even if you
That was
do
my
it,
first introduction.
what I eat is probably better. Anyway, that's why I was so rudely interrupted. Culturally, the taste of Black Columbia. That's what, however you phrase it.
Right.
That's what it is.
Yes, sir.
All right, let me just say this, Barry.
I had to educate Ashley over there where they go.
Well, taste of Black Columbia again. What I'm saying, I think the shifting of the paradigm
Yes, sir.
over 22 years focused in on those 3 or 4 ingredients.
Absolutely.
Those paradigms shifted,
Absolutely.
and it became the taste,
Yes, sir.
and then it became an informational.
And the Empowerment Summit. Yes, sir.
That's right. And I think that's over a period of time, you had that clientele that was there.
Absolutely.
And it takes some time, of course, for that kind of bridge to be crossed by other folks. So I appreciate that shift.
Absolutely.
We got a lot of that going on in Columbia, of course, and it's room for everybody, I think.
Absolutely. And Councilman, to your point, I'll use as an example, we had one of our small businesses, Pelham and Brenda Myers, who own P&B Promotional, came to us and said that they did more business last year at the event as opposed to previously. And I asked him, I said, okay, help me because as we shape this going forward, he said, Darren, you all had a caliber of people that came this year that were very focused specifically on what the mission of what the Expo and the Empowerment Summit. And we got that. We had a lot of those. And now we did get drawback from folks who had become accustomed to the entertainment, but based on, if you look in your report, Councilman, we asked that question, what was, attendees, their perception and approval of the shift, and that came out at 66%. Folks saying, we like the new shift. And we had folks coming up saying, you know what, this is what Columbia needs. This is what our community needs. When you're doing FAFSA assistance on site, when you have job fair on site, when you have speakers that are really talking to the needs of the individuals and the citizenry in that community on a variety of subjects, that's where we really got the draw, because we knew that resonated, or we hoped it would resonate with the population, and we saw that.
Good. Thomas?
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. Absolutely.
At this time, Mr. Mayor, we can entertain a motion to go into executive session. I think the agenda is outlined as, I'm sorry.
Hey, Melissa?
I'm so sorry. That's the main thing that I need done. I'm skipping right over it.
I thought that's who we were talking about when we were talking about the budget and Easter.
I know, I was like, I brought a crowd of 6,000. Wow.
You get it pretty quick, man.
6,000 people sleeping.
He's had a couple days off. He's refreshed.
Well, this is just an overview, and we will be brief, because we actually do have several items in executive session that will take a little bit of time. As Missy is approaching, I would just say, the theme that we're working towards, and you'll see that as Missy talks a little bit about the topics in a broad way today, but we really do want to focus in this budget cycle on revenue generation, economic development, trying to turn the corner a little bit. We know in years past that we have had to focus on public safety, and we will always maintain our approach to public safety that we've started. Foundation is there. I feel really good about where Chief Holbrook and Chief Jenkins are in particular. But a safe city then builds upon growth and development and vice versa. And so I really want to begin to shift and change the narrative a little bit with you all to looking at how we continue to grow our city with the tax base we have, as you know it, with the wonderful service delivery that we pride ourselves on. But the reality is there's growth that we want to continue, and we want to position ourselves well for that. So I know Mr. Rickman has a lot of thoughts about this too. You all have been meeting as that separate economic development subcommittee, which I think is great. There's been a lot of good items that have come out of that committee, and they decided not to meet today due to the upcoming holiday, but we'll meet again on December 4th. But I think between those meetings, the retreat coming up, we really want to lay the groundwork for some really good work in our budget. Missy?
Good afternoon. As Mr. Duvall said, he can't believe we're already starting, but I reminded him budget is an ongoing thought process, recurring. So as the city manager mentioned, part of what we are wanting to do today is sort of set our focus and sort of set the if you will, a roadmap of how we think we are going to take us down this path. Obviously, getting input from City Council on our next we move forward. The theme that we are really working from is a smart city, with our smart city initiatives and preparing for our growth. Ms. Moore. Yes, thank you. I know everybody has the PowerPoint in front of them. The first thing that we always like to do when we're starting out a budget process is talk about what are those things that what's guiding us as we look at our budget. And as we do that, it's nothing we haven't talked about before, but we look at our Envision Columbia. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. Look at City Council priorities. We'll discuss some of those items today. And also the department work plans and what the departments need to accomplish both within the Vision Columbia as well as their goals and objectives that they need to accomplish to provide services to our citizens in our community on a day-to-day basis. We're working still with our priority-based budgeting initiative, which we hope to be able to demonstrate for you in this upcoming budget process, how the budget looks from a priority-based perspective. In other words, are we putting our money towards those priorities that have been identified in more of a visual landscape? So looking forward to be able to present that to you in these coming months. Of course, the departmental budget request, that actually makes up the city manager's proposed budget, and our capital projects. A lot of discussions this year about capital projects, both with the general fund as well as our enterprise funds. Investing in our city's infrastructure is a smart city initiative, if there is any at all. So definitely want to keep focus on those things that will keep us a strong city as well as safe. Of course, there's always those mandated requirements and costs. So those things that we have to keep in place, those things we have to fund and have to move forward with. And then, of course, what we have to balance all of that with is what few and limited available resources we have to make it all work, which is also something else we, as Ms. Wilson mentioned, we plan to spend a lot more time with City Council talking about some revenue options and streams that we might see, as well as City Council's obviously we've had these discussions and ready to bring those things forward. So the discussion points for today, we first want to talk about budget discussion topics. We'll give it a very high-level overview of an approach Jeff will talk about with regards to capital project funding and funding plan and finance options, and overview from some next steps. And then we'll talk a little bit about the budget schedule. So not a whole lot on the agenda for today, but wanted to start laying some groundwork for where we're going. For budget discussion topics, leading off, this is just not necessarily a particular order, but obviously some of them are higher ranking. Development and revitalization, as Ms. Wilson mentioned, already some discussions happening with regards to our economic development initiatives, how we want to focus, what we want to do going forward. looking at some economic development analysis. Looking also at retail and commercial, some of the infill and some of the other things we need to do to help our small and large and businesses thrive and attract and retain them. And of course, annexation, we feel that fits right into our development and revitalization as well. Just mostly, again, these things are not necessarily new topics, but certainly topics that City Council has brought up several times and things that we want to keep, make sure that we bring back in terms of how they will impact the budget going forward. Revenue generation, this is an area that we were talking about really and primarily revenue generation as it relates to our nonprofit and non-tax entities. Columbia by far has the largest one of our largest non-tax property bases in the state. We'll talk a little bit more, get some legal opinion in executive session this afternoon about some information already provided, so we'll be able to talk through those items in a little more in-depth during executive session. Of course, as we come back out, we will be talking with City Council more directly going forward. Affordable housing, City Council just passed an ordinance recently, so some of these items, again, are already in the works, but as we keep moving forward, setting some direction about what are the goals and next steps with regarding our affordable housing initiatives. Homeless services is here. It's time to renew some of our contracts. I know there's some discussions about some of the approaches that we are currently taking with some of our service providers. So just sort of refreshing our next steps and focuses on our collaborations and partnerships that we currently have in place. Council-directed projects, this is a wide variety of different things that are brought up on a regular basis, so we'll bring those forward as we sort of outline some of them more often. County Fire 911, a lot of discussions, especially right now as we talk about funding those operations, maintaining those operations, what are some of the next steps with the leadership in those organizations and how we're going to move forward with them. And then again, the Alvin S. Glenn, as we've brought forward just about the funding mechanism and how we are billed. We are back in compliance to what was in the agreement. Well, I shouldn't say what's in the agreement, but what was laid out to us 2 years ago in terms of how the jail would be approaching cost increases on an ongoing basis. So we're back at that $10 a year increase. We do need to have some additional discussions in terms of addressing what are in those costs. I think the city manager is having some conversations with the interim administrator. It's definitely on one of their agenda topics in terms of getting the information that's been requested, information that we need to be able to understand what are the costs going into the jail, what is the city paying for. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list. There may be some other things that obviously come up. We're mostly wanting to sort of lay out those things that we know we've heard from City Council, those things that are being discussed that will have some impacts on the budget and making sure that the budget is reflective of these sort of topics.
But again, there's still room for other topics.
Certainly.
All right. This is just
Trying to demonstrate some of the outline and some of those things. It's kind of like
one's going to take us forever.
Chef putting together his ingredients to getting ready for the next big meal.
Is there any today that
Yes, now
stand out to you? Please let us know today so we can begin the.
Well, and Councilman McDowell and I talked about this earlier today, and we talked to Randy yesterday, and Randy's supposed to be getting you just an updated of their capital projects, but I have a concern that we're not always getting everything that are the needs, because I think that probably there are so many needs, probably in all, of course, in all departments, but in our parks that there's a kind of a mentality that we don't have the money, so we're not going to ask for it, and we have, that will eventually present some safety issues and some other things. So I've encouraged him to give you the full list so that we can have a good opportunity to understand where our needs are, specifically with maintenance and some issues internally with our parks. Because I'm concerned if we continue to have community promotions and other things, and I know that there are outside needs, but I don't want to take care of outside needs at the detriment to our internal needs. And I know that the parks, and some other buildings may have some stuff too, but I would love to see just a full assessment of our park system regarding facilities. I know that we did that master plan, but I'm not sure that master plan really addressed even just our current inventory and where we are, as well as making sure that they're all up to par.
So, thank you for that too, Ms. Devine. With parks, with fleet services, there's a couple of these type items that we're not gonna delve in them today, but Jeff is gonna touch upon a bigger picture plan where we're talking about capital needs, and that's really where we're gonna start focusing on the internal needs of the city. I will say with parks, we've gone down a path with Missy and her team in community development to identify some of those immediate needs with parks. So I'm not sure if Randy mentioned that, but what we're trying to do is, because of the issues with timeliness and that sort of thing with CDBG funds, where there's some low-hanging fruit where we can utilize some of those funds and channel those towards parks where appropriate. That's the plan. So let me see if you want to shed any more light on that right now. But Missy and Randy and Gloria have really been working real close to do some of those low-hanging fruit maintenance, ADA, anything in our parks where it would be deemed eligible. We've been identifying those through CDBG dollars.
And we've identified 5 parks we're going to do environmentals on,
Yeah.
just to have them ready. If funding is available, we can move on.
Yeah.
At some point, Missy, we'll identify those parks.
I mean,
Okay. Let me ask this question. You said something about internal
needs of the city.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm really particularly interested in is that the beauty of our city depends upon folk coming in, spending hospitality day. We got an abundance of vacant buildings that ought to be torn down, have already been plastered with things on the buildings for demolition. At some point, there ought to be some consideration, and I think we talked about this some months ago, perhaps using CDBG dollars for demolition. I think the growth of our city is going to depend a lot upon how other folk look at those buildings and how unattractive they are. The chief, of course, gives us a list every month of abandoned pieces of property and the condition in each one of our districts, which is very, very helpful, I think. But the beauty of our city, of course, has to do with, and these are communities where there are abandoned buildings that's already have the tags on them. We don't have the money to knock them down, but that's hopefully some low-hanging fruit that we can pluck real early.
And yes, sir, and
I think that's the internals. Is that, if I understand, is that the kind of internals we're talking about?
well, that actually is not. When I refer to internal needs of the city, I'm talking about our facilities and
Okay.
our internal needs, like
All right.
fleet services.
But that's
It's been a
beyond-
long-standing issue with we've grown out of the building where, our folks work very hard every day to, upkeep of, police vehicles and all other city vehicles, et cetera. But some of those things, I guess I didn't mention on here, Reverend McDowell, because as you know, we plugged in money through CDBG. I didn't really address CDBG type dollars or federal dollars with this list, but there is money budgeted through that federal funding source for demolition. So we've tried to do that too, because that's kind of an easy way to move funds, because you're right, there's so many properties where we could utilize those funds to demolish. How much did we budget?
So we have, I believe, a total of $300,000 current year of CDBG that, this department,
Just for demolition?
for demolition of residential structures, not commercial.
Yeah.
And are you talking about commercial as well, Mr.
No,
President?
residential.
Particularly residential.
And there's a different requirement for commercial. from a
Residential.
perspective.
Okay, and so we want to continue to do that.
Is that in the pot now?
It is, it's happening. Yes, and it will be spent by March, as a matter of fact.
Small pot.
Just checking.
That's a small pot.
Okay.
That's a small pot.
I'm sorry.
No.
Can we stay on that for a quick second? You know, obviously, there are reasons why facilities get to a point where they have to be demolished. Same as with housing. And that also leaves an impression on the city. And there are people who, when they move to this city, there are people who talk to them. If you're out there, you'll be hearing this, as to where they should go to look for a house. If this is where you should live, that part of town and not this part of town. It's all about appearance, and I think also commitment. I'm kind of briefly chatting with the chief that I'd like us to take another look at the property maintenance ordinance that we passed for a number of reasons. And all you have to do is drive and look. So I think we need to find out why we still have almost the same number of houses that either should be torn down or it seems like we've got to put something in there that will hold landlords' feet to the fire. You remember now, got nothing to do and nothing against people flipping houses. But you have a responsibility to maintain those houses. You have a responsibility to hold your tenants accountable as well as taking care of your own responsibilities. So my question is, I'd like us to look at that, but also I think one of my questions is, do we have sufficient manpower? If not, then that becomes a budget issue. Because I think we need to make, I'm going to cut this off, but that is a basic question that I have. And I'm hoping we can talk about that, and I don't have a problem with giving that priority with expected results.
Yeah, most of the property has been identified. How many pieces of property, Chief?
But I'm saying, no. I'm not just talking about demolition. I'm talking about those that are standing that should be repaired.
Just the code cases.
Yeah, huh?
You're talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
Let's use this
Code.
as an ad in Howard. I think one thing the city manager asked for is if we got some thoughts
I got some.
what fits into those boxes, let's give them those future discussion options.
All right, that's
Okay, I'll get out of the weeds.
Summarizing, in the weeds, literally.
I'll get
Well, mine's sort of granular too, but I want to throw them out just to get it on the record. We've got ShotSpotter. ShotSpotter has been funded this year by cobbling together funds from 2 or 3 different places. This is going to be a continuing expense for the city, and we need to stabilize the funding for that service. On the other side of that, we need a more robust video system for the city, an up-to-date one that can give our officers real time and give our other departments real time also.
And evaluate location.
Location, I think we can find the road locations for them. On the another topic that's on my mind is Owens Field. Owens Field gets probably as much or more use than any other facility in the city, and I didn't know until last year that we were responsible for the maintenance of it, although it's leased to the YMCA. If we're going to be responsible for the maintenance of it, it needs to get some attention, because I sat out there years ago when I had kids playing soccer, grandkids playing soccer, and I don't think it's been improved one bit since then. we put some good facilities out there, but we hadn't increased the care of the fields too much.
I don't know, my son's played out there, soccer.
Yeah.
That one's a bit hairy, because was it owned by the school district?
It's owned by the county.
Richland County School District and us.
County, I think we're third in line, and then I think with the sublessor,
We're stuck with the maintenance more than anything else.
Yeah.
We're with,
We got the maintenance
but,
deal.
but you're right, it's been a wonderful place to cite some exciting facilities now. That's what's happened at the airport and Curtis Wright Hangar, and City Roots and everything else. I mean, it'd be nice to put a bow on it in some way.
Yeah.
But it's probably the most tied up, contractually piece of dirt in the city.
And my last input into the wish list here is something we talked about last year, was to improve the entrances to Columbia.
Yeah, that goes up to that, what they were bringing up earlier.
Which was who?
Talking about,
Appearances.
appearances. I mean,
Yeah.
we're gonna require people to keep their yards clean, but we're not keeping our roadways and entrances clean.
You can ride 40 miles from Columbia and see some really good intersections. You go up
I like Rock Hill.
I-26.
Yeah, right.
Go up
Hill
Rock
has a
Hill.
good one.
I was up in Rock Hill yesterday. They've got some beautiful intersections, and we need to figure out how to fund these. I know that Lexington County does a private golf tournament or something like that, and it raises $400,000-$500,000 a year.
Private
But
golf what?
Yeah.
I think it's a golf tournament. It's done by Jake Moore.
What about
Oh,
parks?
you mean as a fundraiser?
It's a fundraiser that they use for their intersections. Yeah.
And if you're done, Howard, the staff has done a lot of work around gateways, and you guys remember
Thanks.
Fort Robert
It's
did
the-
that some time ago.
Yeah.
A lot of the folks have done, of course, have used some of the state highway funds. We have a whole lot more gateways coming into the city, and a whole lot of them actually are not in our jurisdiction.
It's DOT, we can work.
But I know that Missy and Robert has been working on a couple of different ideas that would be beautification, but wouldn't be as high dollar.
Some of our partners, like the school district, we need to talk to. The brand new middle school over there off Trentham Road Extension. You ride down there, got a beautiful new school, and there's 4-foot weeds growing in the median in front of it.
I think that's county.
That's Richland too.
It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
drive by it every day. It's like when
Yeah.
you have an employee and he walks over a piece of paper,
Finally got the building torn
waiting
down.
on somebody else to pick it up.
I finally got the building torn down at the corner right there, that little building that was there, on Decker and Trentham Extension. But some low-cost approaches, everything from maybe mimicking the wildflowers program in North Carolina.
Yeah,
There's some good private sector departments like Jake and Stuart do over there. Some folks that Cecil has been talking to on the Fairfield Road.
Do some daylighting, yeah, on
So
the.
there's a whole lot that can be done, but it should be
and let's not forget the quiet zone.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, I think for me, the top line is the most important thing, and I think over the next few days and weeks, y'all are gonna see a lot more information about how we're at a disadvantage, and we've gotta change it, and we're gonna have to change the way we do economic, the way who we partner with, where we spend our dollars, and start getting some accountability, because our growth level is very handicapped, and we're gonna have to really think about how we move forward. Annexation is gonna be important, obviously, retail and commercial enhancements to the economic development. And I think we're gonna have to spend a couple days in our workshop really working on this, because you look at, the rates that are out there, the millage rates, at where we are competitively against our sister cities, which explains part of the reason why we don't have cranes in the sky and the growth that they're having. And it's significantly different. I hate to say it, Richland too, by passing this $500 million, has probably killed economic development in the Northeast. Their millage rate's gonna be close to 700 when it comes in. Compared to other communities that are significantly lower.
I go out to Columbia Mall, and folks are asking me, what are we gonna do about the mall? I said,
But it's
"Look,
affecting us for
Right.
recruiting, businesses and everything else, and I think we're gonna have to take a hard look that we make some really smart and hard decisions about who gets funded next year and where we put those dollars, because we're getting left behind. And we are a great city, and we've got to tackle it. And the majority of what's going on is not, it's not
Our
because of
fault.
us.
It's not us.
You look at the millage rate over the last 10 years. But over the last 10 years, it's changed here from what, 489 to 500, yeah,
666
since 2010. And guess where it's come
Who's
from?
getting it?
Not here. So
I
I think number one on that budget topic is going to be very important, because affordable housing is not going to be capable if we don't have a way to help offset it. None of it is just, yep.
Well, I tried to order it and just thinking through it, in a prioritized way with Ms. Media. But obviously, many of the other things you all just mentioned will come into play as well, so.
We got time to discuss it.
Climbing back out of the weeds, looking at the, just kind of the higher picture, one of the things staff is working on right now is the, more of a comprehensive 5-year plan looking at the capital projects. So some of the things y'all have already discussed for our parks, for various other things throughout. And, we have spent a lot of time with water and sewer and taking a look at 5-year projections. So we're taking a look at now our needs within the general fund and other areas within the city, so that we can have a plan, so that when we look at the budget this year, every year we talk about different items. Why don't we do this? We need to do that. Our plan is to put all that together, the various items, and come back to y'all with a plan that we can look at, so that we have some goals to look at over the next several years, so that we know when we're budgeting, or if we have excess funds or whatever it might be, we're focused on these different items. Some of the items we'll be bringing back to y'all will be taking a look at expansion of the convention center. That is a big item that has come up now for several years. We need to start focusing on that if that's still something that we're going to move forward on. You've already mentioned our parks throughout. That will include Finley Park. What are we going to be doing there, and how do we pay for that? We're talking about just our public works, different facilities. I think someone's already mentioned our fleet facility, but then there's other needs throughout the city. And that's just a small handful of the many items that we'll be bringing back. But we're going to take a look at how do we pay for these. Some of it might be issuance of debt. Some of it might be just as, in general, you'll hear us say things like pay-go. That's just the cash that we generate in that current year within our general fund, or maybe other sources of funds as well. So we're putting together a plan that we can bring back to y'all here. I can't remember the exact month, but in December we'll talk more about the individual projects. We want to make sure that everyone's still on board with the various projects. And then in January, February, we'll be talking about how we implement these things over the next 5 years. Could even be longer than 5 years, depending on what the projects are. But that's to give you an idea, because almost all of y'all have probably talked to me or Missy or the manager about various projects and how we're going to get to them. And we do have a habit of, when we get focused on one, we do a great job of, we're going to find a way to get it done, and we do whatever it takes to get it done. So we want to make sure we have a plan that focuses on the many things that we need, and that we have at least a 5-year plan that we can look ahead and figure out how we're going to pay for the needs.
Can I get a copy of that Parks Master Plan? That's a good document. I lost mine.
We'll get it for you.
That's a good document. Do you have a copy?
Now, as we generate these various discussion topics, and some of the same things that we've talked about, do we need to get that to you, or you've already taken notes, or what?
We're taking notes always, Reverend McDowell, and the goal is, and Missy's about to talk about the budget schedule, is that we'll begin to bring these things back in front of you starting in December.
Good.
And I don't think anyone's been shy in telling me their projects.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I will. Thank you, Jeff.
And thank you, City Council, for the good conversations. like to start out trying to demonstrate how broad, the areas we are talking about, the big picture, and making sure we're covering, especially hearing the conversations about our internal operations and knowing, we try to bring forward all of our needs and then figure out where we go and what the focus is in terms of where we do apply resources that are limited to those things that are our priorities. Last thing we want to touch on a little bit is just sort of give you a high-level overview of the schedule. Starting in December, we are looking, to come back to some of the revenue discussions that Jeff mentioned a little bit, some follow-up like from our conversation in executive session. There's already scheduled economic development committee meetings, so some of those discussions will be continuing starting in December. And then the capital projects overview as well. That will be talking a little bit about this project list. We do a good job of funding our utility operations now with capital projects, but general fund, as mentioned, we've been woefully limited in terms of options what we can do. So hopefully this comprehensive 5-year plan will help us to address and identify options for going forward. City Council retreat is scheduled for January 16th and 17th. I would also ask that you keep in mind that Ms. Tyler Sinclair, when she comes back, she will be interviewing each of you individually, January 14th and 15th. Those will be, one of those days. It won't be all day. It will be just individual sessions. So she will reach out, or we'll reach out to help coordinate those times. So if you could be mindful of that she will want to interview you leading up to that. We'll we will renew and review the vision. We'll look at strategic objectives, and the other part is to get some providing guidance on the ongoing work plan. We will continue our conversation about general fund revenue projections and look at the general fund revenue projections around this time as well, and bring back our water and sewer rate study, an overview, and update, sort of talk about where we are and then what the plan is for going forward with our water and sewer study. February and March, we'll get a little more in-depth with our parking system and bring back some discussions related to our parking services and our parking system. Also getting more in-depth with our capital project, continued conversations, but then we may be bringing back an overview of our water and sewer CIP, stormwater CIP projects and proposals at that time. By April, we will have the city manager's proposed budget. In May, we will have, obviously, remaining budget discussions and continued budget discussions, pointing out that May 7th is the last regular meeting before we advertise the budget. There is another date, and we advertise the budget on May 20th. May 21st, we'll wrap up the entire budget, do a all-fund summary and wrap up. And then we are scheduled for a public hearing on June the 4th and the first reading of the budget, with second reading by June 18th. So we have really a short window to cover a lot of topics, but as we always do, we will get through them with you and bring forward a balanced budget. Sets our path forward.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Now I think we are ready for a motion to go into executive session, and we don't have any additional items unless you all do to add.
Personnel.
Okay. Oh.
Just like everybody's hair stands up when you say that.
We do have those sometimes, Mr. Bear, so it
I have a contract.
goes with the territory.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, we go into executive session for discussion of negotiations incident to proposed contractual arrangements pursuant to 30-4-70A2 SCNG franchise agreement and Lamar sign lease, receipt of legal advice related to matters covered by attorney-client privilege pursuant to A2, dockless transportation, stand-up scooters, and entity fees. Discussion of matters related to proposed location or expansion of services to encourage location or expansion of industries or other businesses pursuant to 70A2, Project Zion and Project Klein.
Second.
Discussion. Question, clerk call the roll.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, if we could stay put for the first item in number 4 and both items in number